homemade bread. It's really good, tasty, smells up your house, makes this wonderful aroma that you just can't wait to get the bread out of the oven, tear a piece off, put a little butter on it, and eat it. It's really not that hard to make either. So today I'm going to show you how I make our honey bread right here in a couple of easy steps to show anybody can make it, and it'll be a big hit for your family as much as it is for mine. So in making my honey bread, the first thing we're going to do is we got to activate the yeast. So I've got 1.5 cups of very warm tap water. And like I said, this is a honey bread, so I'm going to go ahead and use a 1/2 cup, plus or minus a little bit, depends on how sweet you want it, of a honey that we get from one of the local beekeepers here in town. Really delicious. I love this honey. Now I'm going to take my whisk and I'm just going to mix the honey in the water until all of the honey has been incorporated. Doesn't take very long, especially with that warm water. And I did warm up my honey a little bit to help it pour out of the jar. And then it also doesn't cool your water down too terribly much. So the next step is our yeast. So we've got water, honey, I'm going to add the yeast. And in my recipe we're going to use 1 1/3 teaspoon of yeast. I'm just going to sprinkle this over the top. Let's see, get about 1/3 in here. It's pretty close. And set this aside. And I'm going to give this just a little swirl, just a little bit, just to help set that yeast in the water. Make sure nothing's floating on top. Okay, now I'm going to take and cover this up, and we're going to let this sit about 5 to 7 minutes just to let that yeast get active. And okay, so it's been a few minutes. We're going to go ahead and take a look, see what we got. You see it's nice and bubbly now. So we're going to start adding in the flour. So I've got 4 1/2 cups of flour in here, and I've already added 1 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So all of my dry ingredients were in here. I whisked them all up and we're ready to go. So I'm going to slowly add this flour into my mixture here, little by little, until it gets thick enough that I'll go get a spoon. And depending on the hydration level of your flour, it may be really sticky. You may have to add a little bit more actual flour to the mix, or you may have to add a little bit more water. As you do this a couple of times, you'll realize it's really not that hard to adjust some of the stuff as you go along at this stage. Alright, so it's getting to be a nice thick batter, and we're getting everything pretty well incorporated. So I'm going to switch over to a spoon or a spatula. Alright, so switch over to a spatula. We're just going to work this in slowly. And again, you may or may not have to use all of the flour, but you're going to get really pretty close. And if you add a little bit too much flour, you can always add just a touch more warm water. Okay, we're getting close. I'm going to go ahead and dump the whole thing in there. Make this bread quite often. It is a family favorite. And for the flour, I'm using a King Arthur flour. It's a bread flour. It's got 12.7% protein in it, so we're going to get a good gluten structure. Shouldn't have any trouble with this flour. Really works very, very well for bread rolls. I'm going to add just a dash of water back in here. Not much. And I'm going to mix this by hand for just a second, just so I can feel the consistency here. And you can see it's starting to come together. Okay, we are getting pretty close. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to cover this back up. And I'm going to let this rest for about 45 minutes, maybe an hour. It's going to not quite double in size. And once we get to that point, I'm going to punch it back down, roll out a couple of loaves, keep it nice and tight so we can do two different types of bread here. We're going to do one in a pan, and we're also going to do a free form loaf. So we're going to get this covered up, and I have my oven warmed up a little bit. It's going to be about 100 degrees in there. It's only 60 degrees in the house right now, so I'm going to put it in there, help keep things moving. So we're going to wait till it almost doubles in size. We're going to punch it back down, make our loaves, and we'll go from there. Okay, so the bread dough has proofed for a little while. You can see we've about doubled in size here. I did take the towel off. I did cover it up with a little bit of plastic wrap. But we're going to take that off now. So you can see it's quite big, nice big bubbles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to punch this down. We're going to get it out of here. We're going to add a little bit of flour. So it is going to be just a tiny bit sticky. Don't worry, you're not going to hurt the bread dough. I'm just taking my fingers, sliding them down the bowl, pulling it over so that I can get it loosened up. Get it to roll out. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just work this a little bit here. We got one more proof to go. I don't want to do too much with it right at the moment. So we're going to stretch it out. It's going to build the gluten. Fold it over, stretch, fold it over, turn it, stretch it out again. Fold it over. Okay. All right. So now we're going to cut it into our individual loaves. Bread scraper works great for this. Cut this in half, just about. We're going to work this one first. Just the tiniest little bit of flour. Stretch, fold, stretch, fold. We're going to do this a few times. Just trying to build up that gluten structure. Make a nice bread. If it gets a little too sticky, feel free to put a little bit of extra flour back on it. I want this bread to be slightly sticky or tacky, but it doesn't stick to you. That'll give us a nice and light, fluffy bread. With a nice crust on the outside. Now I'm just going to put a little bread, flour. Again, I'm using King Arthur, just on the edges. Okay. Now, first one I said we're going to do in a loaf pan. This happens to be a cast iron bread loaf pan. I'm going to just take and rub the inside a little bit with some flour. Helps it not stick. Okay, there we go. Now, you can take and tuck the ends underneath and seal them off. Because if you look, you kind of got where you rolled it a little bit here. So we're going to take and we're going to roll this over. We're going to tuck it underneath. Nice and tidy. Just like that. Drop it down into the pan. And we're going to let this proof again for just a little while. We're going to let this get all the way to the top of the pan here. It's going to reproof. It'll get just above there. Have a nice beautiful little loaf. And then at that point in time we'll be ready to put it in the oven and cook it. So that one's done. The other one I'm going to do, this is going to be more of a free-form bread loaf. We're going to just use this cast iron pan here. And all I'm going to do is just work this a little bit. Again, stretch it, fold it, working on that gluten structure, and this actually helps build strength in the bread crust itself. And we're going to kind of roll it, pinch, roll the sides again. We're making a ball. We're going to pull them down, pinch them, stuff them inside, pull everything around, and pinch it, stuff it down inside. And then as you work the bread dough, you're going to start to get this nice round dome on the top. It's nice and smooth. So we're pulling the sides up and closing them at the top and pushing that back down into the middle. And we're going to keep going with that. This method here is a little bit easier, but all you're doing is you're pulling the sides up, pushing them towards the middle, and closing them into the middle. Sealing it as you go. Alright. There we go. Nice little bread loaf. Flour at the bottom of my pan. Maybe a little bit more than that. There we go. Okay. Now, I'm going to take this bread dough ball, set it down in the middle of the pan, middle as I can get it. And then we're going to take and we're going to score top of the bread. I'm going to use some scissors here. So I'm going to go 1, 2. Okay, there we go. Actually, I'm going to do this one just a little bit deeper right here. Right here, there we go. Alright. So what that's going to do is as this dough is rising, it's going to push out from the middle and open up into a beautiful bread loaf. So we're going to get these resting. We're going to let them double in size and then we'll get them into the oven. Okay, so we've got the second proof done. You can see the bread loaf pan. Here it is in the pan. And then the free-formed loaf. Now I am going to take and score this right down the middle ever so gently. And I'm using a knife blade off of a Havalon knife because they are incredibly sharp and they do a really good job. I'm also going to deepen this one here just a little bit. Alright, there we go. So now I've got the oven going. We're going to go 450 degrees. And we're going to take a look at it at about 25 minutes. May have to get to about 30, but we should be in good shape. Okay, here we go. We got the bread loaves are out of the oven now. Take a look at them. You can see here's our free-form loaf and the one in the bread pan here. I do like to, at this point when they're still very hot, just real quick brush with a little bit of butter, just because that's the flavor we like. Go ahead and do that while they're still real hot. You can see they really do have a nice golden brown color to them. Alright, so now I got some butter on there. And I just go right over the top just to dab off all the little extra. All I'm trying to do is just ever so slightly soften the edge and give it a nice little sheen. So there you go. We got a couple of really nice bread loaves. I'm going to let these cool off and we'll slice one up for you. Okay, so the bread's been cooling off. Should be just about right for us to go ahead and give it a try. So let me cut off a little slice here for you, kind of see what we got inside. There we go. Nice little bread structure. Tastes really good. My wife's just here off the camera. She's eyeballing me. She wants a piece. So I better cut her one. There we go. Another one. You want to come try it? Okay, so here we go. She's going to do a taste test. I'm going to do a taste test even though I had a little cheater piece already. I like the end. What do you think?
It's good. It's delicious.
Turns out about the same every time, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there you go. That's the honey bread. You can see we've got a really good structure. It's going to make nice small little sandwiches, or for the most part, we just put a little bit of butter on it and eat it. So, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like, subscribe, comment. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any good bread recipes that you really like, please let us know, and we'll see if we can't make them too.
Can I use that butter on here? Thank you.
Better with butter?
Everything's better with butter.